the human in the loop, I don't think is ever going to go away, right? I think the human in the loop is just going to have heightened expectations around strategy, connecting the dots, critical thinking, curiosity, creativity. I think those things are going to be what sets apart the future skill sets that are going to really change organizations.
And they keep telling us that it's all over for HR. The age of AI is upon us, and that means HR should be prepared to be decimated. We reject that message. The future of HR won't be handed to us. Instead, it'll be defined by those ready to experiment, adopt, and adapt. Future Proof HR invites these builders to share what they're trying, how it's going, what they've learned, and what's next. We are committed to arming HR with the AI insights to not just survive, but to thrive. Hello and welcome to the Future Proof HR podcast, where we explore how forward-thinking leaders in HR and across the board are preparing for disruption and redefining what it means to lead people in a changing world. I'm your host, Thomas Kunjappu, CEO of Cleary. Now, today's guest is Jessica DeLorenzo, the Chief Human Resources Officer at Kimball Electronics. Human-centered and purpose-driven, Jessica leads global HR to build capabilities, sustain a vital talent pipeline, and create meaningful careers across a multi-generational, globally diverse workforce. From executive searches and leadership development to serving as an internal counselor to the C-suite, she's known for turning values into operational habits, flexibility, partnership, and respect, while enabling the business to execute. Jessica, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Before we get into Kimball Electronics, I'd love to learn a little bit about your overall career path. I know you've been in higher ed and, now into a public company leadership. Can you tell us a little bit about what shaped your path?
Yeah. After college, I started my career in higher education on the administration side. Just grew up with teaching, learning, leadership development, human development sort of skill set. Spent almost a decade in higher education. And at the time, I sort of hit a plateau. Kimball Electronics was spinning off of Kimball International as its own public company. So it was building out the infrastructure. And part of that was the HR team. And I interviewed for a role, was invited to join the organization, and had no idea that I had boarded a rocket ship, both personally and professionally, the company's growth, my own personal growth. So I did that role for a couple of years and was tapped on the shoulder to be the successor for the vice president of HR at that time. And here we are today. Been at the company for almost 10 years, and it's been quite a ride.
That's so interesting to hear about. It's rarer for folks to
Yeah.
be in a role for a decade.
Yeah.
Did I hear that right? So actually, your transition into HR was at Kimball
It
when you were
was,
in
yeah. So
administration in higher
yeah,
education.
absolutely. Yeah, so it was very much a sort of experiment, I would say, in transferable skills. Started going from higher education to a public global manufacturer. So yeah, I have a very non-traditional path to this seat, but I think it's proof that it can be done, and just the evolution of HR in general. It's much less transactional and it's much more sort of consultative and human-centered and behaviors driven and motivation. So if you have those skill sets, you really can be a trusted counselor and guider for the organization.
Tell me a little bit about, yeah, exactly where, like, some of the tensions that the function is facing at this time, right? One phrase that we hear often is in HR, let's do more with less. There's pressure to make more things happen, but there's like less budget. What do you think of that? Do you hear that? How do you manage that as an HR leader?
Yeah, and that's particularly true, I think, for us here at Kimball Electronics. We're a really low margin business, doing more with less. I won't say it's a mantra, but it is a theme and a pressure for the organization. And doing more with less really to us means continuous improvement and working smarter, not harder. So for us, one of the biggest tensions when that comes to my mind in the terms of doing more with less is the evolution we're going through with AI. And for us, it's really important to consider what language we use. Being a global company, language is really important to us. So when we're navigating these tensions, it's really important for us to focus on the and. So, yes, the AI evolution is here. So the and or the tension is, it's change and it's really difficult, and there are certain human emotions about that. And there's opportunity and there's hope to do things a little bit better, especially for our business, using language around AI and that tension that there is margin expansion opportunity here to do more with less because of the tools that we have access to. And there's ways to really build out some meaningful work for people. So it's not necessarily replacement, it's and what can I do? How can AI be a teammate to me to make me more than I am?
I love that perspective. Do you have examples, both either both in the HR function where you've kind of expanded in and gotten like more things happening, or more broadly at the organization in any function, which of course in in HR we're a lever point, right? We're helping leverage through whether it's being a counselor or through L&D efforts to enable that in the broader organization.
Yeah, so the examples that come to my mind is we've been driving digital, whatever that means, in the manufacturing environment. And the business units have gotten really good about dashboarding and now layering in AI behind the dashboards to give them certain trending. So it's really interesting to see AI has given you access to more information with trending, and you're using it to make decisions. So from the HR perspective, my concern is, and what training do you need to increase your cognitive thinking and your strategic thinking to be able to have stronger insights based on the data that it's giving you? So it's that protecting the human in the loop. So we're using a lot of different technologies and predictive analytics, machine learning, and we need to make sure people have the skills to use it to make decisions appropriately using the information that they have.
So how do you deal with the change management that comes with this? I think there's fear often. You already alluded to that, right? With an employee base in really any kind of industry at this point. And there's a big change management effort. So you're talking about training being like one aspect of it, but yeah, how do you think about guarding against fear, that fearful element when you think about AI from an employee's perspective?
I really believe in the power of play as a way to lower the barrier of entry into the world of AI. So our management philosophy is really about acknowledging the human and the emotion and acknowledge and validating that. And it's to us, it's that equally with the why. The why can feel very like business jargon to the individual who still fears their job being replaced. So if you can acknowledge the human aspect of it and validate their feelings before you go into the business case for it, I think that can be a really powerful way to lowering defenses, calming the situation, getting people a little bit more open to exploring and playing around with the technology.
I love that play, right? Just activates this different part of our brain and energies, both how we just
Yeah.
show up for ourselves and also with each other.
Yeah.
So you said something in our prep call that I think that resonated for me. I wanted to throw it back to you and have you expand on it a little bit. Maybe, and having an AI strategy isn't necessarily a goal in and of itself. It's a more of a business strategy where AI is enabling it. Tell me about the difference that you see there.
So at Kimball, we have been really diligent and I think proactive in that we have a AI policy, AI use policy as part of like our information security management system. But it really makes me cringe a little bit when people say, "What's our AI strategy?" Because I think we're missing an opportunity if we don't consider the larger ecosystem in terms of business strategy. And AI is a tool along the way of our business strategy, but it can be transformative. How does AI change our business model? How do we go to market? Who our customers are, how we serve our customers, what features do we sell, what services do we provide? So just by saying we need to deploy an AI strategy is really maybe doing the company a disservice by not looking at how can we use it as a tool to increase profit for our stock owners? How do we create more meaningful work and jobs? How are we more responsible citizens? How are we better partners to our suppliers and our customers because we have data that we can aggregate and have a conversation with? And it's that sort of consideration of the whole ecosystem of the company that drives more towards it's gotta be a business strategy. It's if we just use AI as a tool for efficiency, we're not gonna get as far as we could. So really stepping it up and asking a question of what are some real possibilities to transform the business model, I think is a hard question, but I think it's the one we need to be asking ourselves to stretch our thinking.
Yeah, it's interesting. You threw in the concept of an AI strategy, which, if you think about it that way, myopically, you tend to lead to efficiency gains, right? So we're doing a
Right.
bunch of different things, and let's have AI or human in the loop AI somehow make that like more efficient, which is one part of the equation. But the other side that tends to ignore, if you just think about it as a starting point, is creativity around margin expansion or new business ideas, which can be enabled. Uh, by AI. But often on the HR seat, though, I will say I feel that's the hot topic in boards and in leadership teams. Like, we need
Mhm.
an AI strategy, and
Mhm.
and part of that is let's make sure we have an acceptable use policy and like an
Mhm.
IT
Mhm.
policy towards that. But I hear you about you need that, but that's just a part of the picture.
Yeah.
So going back to your concept of play, I was really interested and wanted to dig in a bit, but you personally built, well, let me put it this way. I think you had an aha moment as you were going on. You try to do something like off on your own. Like, I would say the HR team in general, the whole, it's leverage for the whole entire organization. And the chief human resource officer is leverage for that levered organization. And yet you went in and played around with some AI and I think maybe came some realizations. Could you tell us a little bit about your personal journey?
Yeah, it started with some curiosity, just, "Ooh, what is this thing?" And a lot of the trends around make your action figure, I think was one of the first things that I did, if you remember that, is you say, "I'm an HR professional," and you give the prompt is a few other pieces of information around you, "Now make me an action figure." And it gives you an image of you in a box, and, like, you upload your picture and then
Oh,
all this
okay.
and it makes you a little action figure,
Nice.
which was just really fun to do. So I then shared that with my team because there's so much research that shows that if you see your manager or a leader in the organization using AI, you're like 3 times more likely to use it.
Mm.
So, it was important for me to showcase my failures and my successes and my little pieces of joy along the way with my team, and it was so interesting because I'm known for wearing, like, these red heeled shoes, and my AI figurine did not have my red shoes on, and my team was so quick to point it out, like, "Where are your red shoes?" And, it was a really that was a bit of an aha because it was like, it can go so far. And then you add the human, sort of the emotion and the relationship and the context around it makes it just a little bit better. So that was one of the first things that I did. And I've taken a few AI courses, I've read a couple books, and I finally took a pretty structured class as part of my MBA program, and it was, like, exactly what I needed. It was, like, 4 days immersive. Here's rapid fire, here's this tool, then this tool. So you just build a tool library, and out of that, I was like, "I can build an agent."
Mhm.
Like, I now know what an agent is,
Okay.
so I can build it too.
Yeah.
So I got into our company platform and just had a conversation with the tool and the agent creator, and we now have this little agent that I built that we're testing and rolling out, and it was just as simple as act as my HR generalist, and here's our guiding principles, here's our employee handbook, here's our benefits guide. Now create an agent where you can query these things and answer questions as customer service for employee self-service. So it's an agent that I can ask questions to, and we're testing it, and it's really fun, but I literally vibe coded it in 10 minutes. And here it is. And
Nice.
then we rolled it out to our HR teams, and the next sort of step in the journey was having them then play with it. So the task was, here's this agent that I built in 10 minutes. You can too, by the way. Here's how you do it. But let's create a logo. Let's create a mascot for this agent. So then they just went wild in terms of the creativity, and we had a contest of who's the mascot. We voted, and now there's a little can be the HR helper,
Oh, yeah.
is the name of this agent. It unlocked some fun and creativity and lowered, again, a barrier of entry for the other HR teams members to get in and just play around, find a little joy. My journey has been experiment. What is this thing? All the way to some real formal education, building a library, building understanding, reading my own education. And then now just back to our loop to let's play around and figure stuff out and build it, iterate a little bit. And then what else do I need to know? And then come back. So it's like a circle. It's a virtuous circle, I guess I would say, in terms of a journey. It's not over. It'll continue.
I love that. So we're talking a little bit about how you're enabling all of this throughout the organization. There's policies, there's tools, and I guess this encouragement to play and try things. And is that what you just described? We've been talking about the HR team. Is that been like a general ethos, like across Kimball, or are there? I imagine adoption varies quite widely, right, across the organization. So how do you think about this enablement and from an L&D perspective or a skilling and upskilling and reskilling perspective for the entire organization with regard to AI?
Yeah, so we were really intentional about partnering with our AI technology supplier. They have free courses and they were more than willing to host webinars that we would record and then put into our HRIS system to really start to build a library of Kimball specific resources for people, for at least for awareness, right? So, everybody had to go through the training of the AI policy. There's a piece of awareness. Here's the training and the webinar that's available to you. There's some awareness. And turning into sort of the engagement and enablement step, we didn't just give everybody the same level license because we're a low margin business. So we being stewards of cost and expense, we wanted to manage the level of licenses. So they were given out selectively to groups we knew were early adopters. Like our customer facing organization really uses it for a lot of market research and business intelligence. Our
Okay.
manufacturing, our engineering teams use it a lot for, again, the Industry 4.0 initiatives and how do we increase quality, reduce scrap, and all of those things. So early adopters got licenses. The executive team got early licenses, again, sort of top down, setting the example, fail hard, fail fast, let's have some fun. But so that was really good and started sharing some early successes. And then more people, as last week when we were talking about this agent that I built, found out, well, 75% of the HR team didn't have the license to be able to
Mm.
access it, which to me was a win. Okay, now we know, let's get them app licenses so then they can play around. But this enablement was being really selective about who got the license to be able to do more because there was already an engaged audience. It was a captive audience that we then could build some scaffolding around and they could be our champions in the organization. Now, getting a license is very easy. You ask for one and you get one, but it's just creating the awareness that you can do more. And when you run into a problem, you just ask and it's automatically given to you, basically. So that's how we've been able to manage the cost of it with the awareness and the enablement so that we have people who are really gonna use it and use it well to then become champions and get that interest and that curiosity so more people are asking so that they can start to experiment and just continue to build on that momentum.
Yeah, I like that way of thinking. Maybe because it's I'm personally frugal, but I like to make sure that you're. I don't know. I'm proving to myself that I'm like running every day for a month before I go in and get the expensive running shoes. You've earned the fact that you've built the habits,
Yeah.
and there's some value for that in this way. And I think this is a smart way to go about it because there have been some news reports about how there isn't ROI for AI in many organizations. And I think what's happened is the big guys have been pushing enterprise-wide licenses because that's a big revenue
Mhm.
stream, of course, for the technology
Sure.
companies, and go wall to wall, and then people will figure it out, and you'll. But of course, it's hard to enable and get the right knowledge and the time, and actually, there's a bunch of steps behind just having the technology. And so this is a smart way to get that pull. And that's a great example of these folks on the HR team are saying, "Hey, I want to participate in this project, but I
Mhm.
don't have
Mhm.
access." But so now you've proven that okay, there's a reason that you need access. So it's like a light speed bump to move you in that direction. So then
Mhm.
once you get to this concept of slowly enabling across the board, are you also sharing or have you created like any kind of councils or a cross functional collaborations around these kind of efforts, or rituals or practices where you're sharing what's happening across the organization?
Yeah, so we have an established council structure where at Kimball, essentially every functional area has a council, and that manager from the business unit in the global environment is a member of that council. And the council structure is meant to be a forum for best practices sharing, standardization initiatives, solving real business problems. So one of our councils is we have a digital council. So the digital council is building out a sort of a functionality of of their group to be sort of innovation hunters. So they're the ones who are council members that go out to the business and bring back really strong use cases or really cool or innovative ways that people are using the technologies out in the business and bringing it to the forefront. And they've already found that the business in this location is actually doing the same thing as the business in this location, but their tool is just a little bit different. How come they weren't just doing the same thing? The council structure is really helpful for us in identifying those best ways of using the technology. So that's been something that's sort of a structure that's worked well at Kimball that we've leveraged to continue the enablement of AI around the organization. For HR specifically, what we've done is I have pretty regular meetings with where I bring the global HR team together, the HR managers at least, and they've requested as part of this meeting, can we have some time to showcase AI wins or best practices? And I said, done. Agenda updated. Come. I said, but what I need from you is a commitment that you will come to this meeting prepared with an idea. I'm not just going to add it to the agenda. We need to have some ownership and some accountability to bring that to the forum. So judging by their, I think, excitement and enthusiasm, I think they will, but that's a little TBD.
Okay.
But yeah, those are ways I think by just little small tweaks or small behavior changes of the already established rituals of the organization are going to continue to be really strong ways to drive the adoption around the company. We also have each functional unit, each business unit has continuous improvement goals by fiscal year by dollar amount. There's going to be a new sort of category of AI enabled by savings. So we were talking about something, I don't remember what the project was, but one of the HR teams was using AI for something. They saved a ton of money, found some efficiencies, and I asked them, well, are you gonna count that as some AI-enabled savings for your CI goal? And it hadn't even crossed their mind. So it's just one of those things about it needs to become natural in terms of how we're thinking about AI as a teammate and an enabler of the business.
This has been a fantastic conversation so far. If you haven't already done so, make sure to join our community. We're building a network of the most forward thinking HR and people operations professionals who are defining the future. I will personally be sharing news and ideas around how we can all thrive in the age of AI. You can find it at gocleary.com/Cleary-community. Now back to the show. Yeah, so there's thank you for going through all of these different ways that you're reinforcing how this is becoming central to the way that teams are operating. Now, because of this experimental and not an experimental, but it's starting small and you're slowly expanding the scope, both in terms of licenses and projects, revenue and compensation based incentives. Eventually, you're slowly moving out in that way. One thing that often happens is that your high talent folks or high potential folks are the ones who get sucked in early on all these projects that could fail, could and maybe necessarily could have a high failure rate, but it's a point of experimentation and that could potentially lead to, I don't know, burnout, right? Or I've heard that kind of
Yes.
like concern. How do you think about that? So that maybe it's like, is it the same folks who end up? How do you safeguard against disillusionment, let's say, from high potential folks who are always in experimentation mode and not necessarily getting to results all the time?
I think one of the risks of just, as we would say, throw AI at it or throw AI at it, throw a high potential at it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of risk there, like you pointed out. I think about let's figure out the process and insert AI into the pain points of the process.
Mhm.
That means that you have to map out your process. And there's a process on paper, and there's a process that happens not on paper. And once you start really understanding the puts and takes and the connections between, it is messy. It is really messy, especially in a company like ours where there's so many audits from regulators, from customers. We have to have extensive documentation of a process. And what we do and when and how and what are the inputs and what are the outputs. And you put that on a wall, and then you add all of the things that happen outside of that process to make the process work. It's really, really, really messy. And as I think about AI and high potentials, that AI does not work in a linear way like humans do. By putting, first of all, by putting a high potential in the room with that on the wall, they're already going to be completely overwhelmed. How am I in the world going to fix this mess of a process? And you're then going to expect me to insert AI into that. You're setting them up for failure right off the bat. There's just no practical way to do that on time or on budget or within expectations. And if they fail, then that's really, really damaging to the high potential's confidence, to the reputation of the organization, to, the disillusionment. Well, AI is really not that great. Anyways, we have this sophisticated process. We can't even use it. So it can just be really harmful and really damaging if we're not careful. One of the guardrails that I think really works beyond sort of the safeguards, the technical, practical safeguards in place that, IT teams do behind the scenes to protect everything.
Yeah.
I think a guardrail for high potentials is teaching them good prompting. And I think what I mean by that is don't expect AI to give them the process and then have them spit out an outcome for you. That's just not how it works. AI is not linear like a human being.
Yeah.
So by developing the ability and high potential talent to sort of invest or embody this leadership principle around the end in mind, I think can be a safeguard, because then you're teaching the high potential person how to use AI to get to the desired state. What is the end in mind? And using them as a teammate. So act as my business strategist. Here's what I'm working on. Here are the inputs. Give me a solution, or here's what I think good looks like within a few parameters, and then go and let it go. Don't give it the steps of the process, because you're just really limiting, I think, the creativity and the value of AI by doing that. So for high potentials, to protect them, I think, from the disillusionment is to protect them, I think, of the messiness of the linear thinking of humans, like
Mhm.
specifically when we're talking about AI. But I also think building in them the leadership capability around visioning and being able to describe and articulate what good looks like, and visioning that, because then you can work backwards. So it works with AI, but it also works outside of AI as you're influencing others and you're leading teams and getting on new projects and new perspectives. I think that's our high potential talent really could benefit in that with the technology, but even outside of the technology with this skill set and this mindset you're building.
So I think there's a lot of depth to this here. So I want to really make sure I get it here. Are you saying that if someone is embedded in a role and is excellent at it, and it's a complex, messy, let's say it's a manufacturing process that someone's like really good at, and they're being challenged to improve it either for efficiency or whatever the outcome is, the starting point is very messy, very complicated, and what's on paper usually doesn't even accomplish a good job at capturing the entire picture. A better starting point than that is to zoom out even further and think about the outcome and almost reimagine the entire process from scratch and expect completely different new process potentially on the tail end of a successful project versus taking this 1000 step process with a lot of if else guardrails and trying to push that in with AI. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a real interesting evolution, because I would advocate that when you prompt it with the end in mind and a really good outcome, like outcomes-based prompting, the process doesn't even matter, because the AI is doing the process to act as the teammate and enhance the high potential's work product, their performance, and right? But I think where that falls short is in an organization like Kimball, where you have to have a process, right? So you got to be selective, I think, of where you can use it and where you can't. You can't expect just to wrap AI around the entire supply chain
Right.
process. It's just not feasible if you try to do that. Disillusioning, because, well, I don't even know where to start.
Right.
But I think if you can pick out even different pieces of the process and then use that as a, okay, well, what's the end in mind? I think you can get some pretty creative ways and that how I get here
Mm.
can be a million different ways. I think that's the way to guardrail high potentials is break it down, but then within that breakdown, have them be able to pan out
Yeah.
to see what's possible, what's possible.
It's about picking the right projects, right? So just being smart about which kinds of processes AI can really be a partner in helping improve it. But then once you pick that, and that might be, you want to reduce the complexity, the variance a little bit, or like break it down into just like this type of machine for this type of market, or this type of process for this type of employee, whatever the thing is, you break it down to something that's manageable and reduce the variance a little bit, and then you can go. But then once you get into that and you understand that process pretty well, you want to zoom back out and think about what is a goal in this particular sub area, right? Because it goes back to the comment I made earlier about these studies that are coming out about lack of ROI from AI projects, and part of it's also just I was thinking you can apply it everywhere, right? You have to be smart about it, and I guess there's a difference between experimentation versus going live. Actually, now I'm just trying to connect the dots to like what we talked about earlier, Jessica, about the agent that you quickly built as an experiment for the HR team. There's probably a journey to go from that to something where there's
For sure.
like something you could, I don't know, introduce in terms of continuous improvement, goal realization, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and it'll be a journey, and how do you balance that with feeling hard and feeling fast? It's everything within me to say, like, "Let's just put Kimby out there, see what happens." 15 minutes. But I realize that's even that can even create some disillusionment because if it's not ready, people are like, "This is terrible. Like, why would I ever use this?" And so it doesn't solve anything for the HR team. So I think that's the balance and the tension in my own experience is when is it ready? When is it ready? What processes are ready? What work is ready for us to put a AI in it? And there's some pretty cool reports and AI tools out there that you can if you don't know where to start, you can put your job title in and it'll give you a breakdown of based on assumed job category activities. This is the potential to insert AI into it. So it even gets you a head start in terms of where should I be thinking about it and where shouldn't I be thinking about in using AI in the business. This little AI agent that we built for our handbook search, companies are doing this all over the place. So I think it's a valid idea. It's just a matter of how do we get it good enough to not be destroy value when we deploy it on a broader scale within the company. So
You want it to be at least as good as what you're doing right now in terms of the service delivery, right? That's the target. And how do you know that is established? And that's true for any kind of deployment, right? When you think about it. So I'd love for you to imagine the future a little bit with me. Sometimes a fool's errand, but you're on this journey both in the HR team, personally, overall at Kimball, right? So, what do you think any of those could look like for the organization or an organization of the future that is future proof as you look ahead 2 to 3 years down the line? How do you imagine processes, skills, your orgs all evolving as this whole structure that we've been talking about starts getting deeper and more embedded into many more parts of the organization?
yeah, my hope particularly for HR is that the function, the teams in the near future will be seen more as a predictor of things instead of a service provider. We're a support function and we need to be optimized. And I appreciate that. But I think in the future with these tools, how do we move from service to predictive to adding value, right? So we're seen as the ones who are in really intelligent ways advising certain things around the people of our organization instead of being there's an important piece around service, but I think that's going to go from 80% of the job to 30% of the job because the skills of where the HR teams are building is accountability. So here are the tools that we've built. Here are the things, the technology available to you, and you are now employee skilled in how to interact with the technology that you're less reliant on the human service piece of the HR function, which I think enables us then to be really thoughtful in places where we're going to need to be thoughtful over this evolution, change management, behavior theory, learning theory, a lot of those things in helping really be the change agents and change partners around the expertise of how the human being works and lives and plays, right? That's going to be the expertise that I think is going to be really valuable that AI is not going to be able to solve yet. So those are the skill sets along with the strategic acumen of business is going to be really important. I think AI is going to get pretty good at business acumen because it learns and uses its algorithm and statistics and the model and here's what you get. But the human in the loop, I don't think is ever going to go away, right? I think the human in the loop is just going to have heightened expectations around strategy, connecting the dots, critical thinking, curiosity, creativity. I think those things are going to be what sets apart the future skill sets that are going to really change organizations.
And
It's pretty cool. I'm really excited. Like I'm along for the ride. So
yeah, that's a fascinating like description. And you're saying that we're going to move from services or where the HR department is offering a service to the stakeholders, right? So leadership, employees, boards, customers, and the community in some kind of extended way. But moving from that to actually being more predictive and actually being able to intervene so that the predictions can be tweaked, right? When you say services, isn't that still a service that you're offering, or can you just help me understand what you mean? Or what's that distinction in your
yeah,
mind?
yeah, that's true. So maybe the difference is reaction and proaction.
Mm,
How are we reacting and responding? And people are coming to us for information versus us pushing information out and being
mm,
at the forefront, pulling the organization along in ways instead of being approached for what's this report? What's our turnover report? What's the handbook say about this? What's the business process? I need you to recruit for me. Those are all services that we provide. So
right.
I think that's a good point. So I think it changes maybe the business model within the service. It's a different type of service to the organization. It's really about I'm not going to do this for you. I'm going to do it with you and I'm going to do it ahead of you. And I think that maybe could be, I think maybe that could be the different sort of the brand or business model within HR in the future.
I love that. Yeah. So for any one of those examples you just went through, you could probably turn it around, right? So it's not, hey, can you hire this person for me, like this kind of role for me? It's, hey, based on what we see in your organizations and your turnover and what kind of the strategy that we have, you're going to need these kind of people. And so this is what we're going to recruit for you in the next organization or in the next time period. Hey, manager, you have these issues coming up in your organization. Here's some training for this particular subgroup. And uh, maybe some of those reactive use cases will still be there, but maybe that will be taken over with in terms of time. So people will still want to know what the PTO policy is, but that can be not necessarily something that the team is spending a lot of time helping
Right.
deliver that service.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it becomes maybe more time for it, which is I maybe ironic, and I'm contradicting myself a little bit here. A little bit more time for human interaction in the prediction versus just sort of a transaction, a human transaction versus a human interaction. Maybe that's the difference.
That's a great point. Regardless of who starts it, proactive or reactive, but it's getting into an interaction versus yeah, I need this from you. It's like very like simple and black and white. So you're saying you're excited about where this is all headed. So then maybe last question is I would love to know if you're talking to someone who is, I don't know, foolish enough to want to get into HR and is just going through college and is coming out into the workforce for the first time. What kind of advice would you have for them, given all these changes that you're seeing both at Kimball and kind of at a macro level, right? For what it means to be successful and what they should be investing in themselves in learning.
I think it's really going to come down to a couple of things in terms of the human interaction we just talked about. It's going to come down to communication, compassion, curiosity, and I think creativity. Oh, apparently there are four
Uh-huh.
C's. But this idea of just being a really good student of the human experience and how humans are motivated and how they learn and how they work and just the potential feelings and spectrum of experiences along the employee life cycle, and just being really good at navigating relationships and communication and influence. Because you can, if you have the cognitive agility, you can learn HR, you can learn the policies and the procedures, you can learn how to do this, how to do that, but you got to have this sort of insatiable desire to serve humans and people, and that selfless curiosity about what makes the other person tick, so that you can get them where they need to be, or get them where they want to go, or help them find a little bit more joy in their work, or find more meaningful work, or find work that they need to get out of or get into. That's the I think maybe the language or the fluency within HR for tomorrow is gonna be really about the human experience and what that means in a digital evolution. So, good luck. It's really exciting. It's gonna be fun, but I think it really is that simple. Humans are humans. So, but we're complicated animals, I would say.
Yes, and so that's why the demand for HR will be there, but it's going to be evolving, right? In terms of you're going to be doing every day. So I think I hear you about you want to be curious about human beings and how you can enable and get the best out of them, and for them to have the highest agency and close to their owning their careers and their work. But then the way you're going to be doing that, to your point, is going to be increasingly digital, right? There's going to be a lot of
Mm.
fluence going to be needed and numeracy in enabling that if you want to get predictive and have those interactions versus transactions. So uh, there's a lot to learn, right? And a lot that's being figured out. So thank you so much for this wide-ranging conversation. I think exhibit some of the things that you're espousing, right? Curiosity yourself by showcased by building your own HR agent, right? If a CHRO can do it, like everyone in an HR ops or generalist, or you should be spending some of your time messing around with this stuff,
Mhm.
thinking of it as play. And that's also what we're trying to enable, probably at some level, in every organization across every industry. And there's a lot of nuances to it, whether it's about use policy or how to roll it out, who gets into it, how to think about it in terms of prompting and not being disillusioned. So thank you for going through all of that. This is all lived lessons, right? Hard fought lessons. Thank you for the conversation, and for everyone out there. I hope you got some value out of this as well as you're future proofing your own organizations and your own HR functions. And with that said, thanks, Jessica, and to everyone out there, good luck, and see you on the next one. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Future Proof HR. If you like the discussion, make sure you leave us a 5-star review on the platform you're listening to or watching us on. Or share this with a friend or colleague who may find value in the message. See you next time as we keep our pulse on how we can all thrive in the age of AI. Hey, it's Thomas again. One quick question before you go. Are you and your HR team tired of answering the same employee questions again and again in Slack? If yes, our Cleary AI powered Slack bot is here to help. It takes routine employee requests and answers it automatically while freeing up time for you to take on more important tasks. At the same time, it automatically builds up an HR knowledge base as you go. It's quick to set up, works right in Slack, and you can try it for free. Just head on over to gocleary.com/HR-chatbot to install it. It's again, gocleary.com/HR-chatbot. Thanks again.